Hello. Today I'll be walking you through our Sentimo system and our EMGenius software. So what you'll see is that within our Pelican case, you'll see various devices, 2 up to 4. And we have our power buttons, so we're able to turn them on within the case. You should see them light up. Or we can turn them off and pair them when we're plugging them in. I'll talk about that in a second. We also have various slots to hold our leads, some electrodes, as well as our adhesives that we'll use to stick the Sentimo system to our skin. And when we're working with the Sentimo device, it works in pair with our EMGenius software. So I'll go ahead and load that up. Try to click on our desktop icon, for example. As the window pops up, we'll have 2 different options here, either to record a new session or to review our existing data. So for today's walkthrough, I'm going to be going through how we begin recording our new session. And it all starts with our leads and a single Sentimo puck. Right now I'm just going to look at one electrode, but each puck is capable of sending 4 channels of EMG, 4 bipolar channels, each with a dedicated IMU, as well as linear and acceleration as well. So if we were to turn these on, it's simply just plugging in our electrodes into our Sentimo system. You'll see our LEDs start to flash. Now I have electrodes prepared on my skin already, but you'll always want to do your proper skin prep, either with any kind of adhesive or abrasion, and then you always want to alcohol prep the skin or shave the site. So to begin, we'll click our record, and we'll have a pop-up where it's automatically searching for all of our devices. If I were to turn on another, for example in the box, I just turned on our blue device and search, we should see our green and our blue devices pop up. But for now, we're going to work just with this green device. So I'm going to go ahead and fix it onto my skin by removing our adhesive backing and placing it right on the forearm. This is just a place I'd like to study either the IMU, as well as place our ground electrodes, our black leads, onto our elbow, a bony landmark, as well as our muscle of interest here, my flexors, or flexor digitorum. So I'll go ahead and place our positive and minus leads on top, just like so. So we'll go ahead and pair our device by selecting this not connected option. We'll see it go from blinking to a solid green, which means it is now paired. And we'll also see the battery notation up here. The battery life you can see is around 47%. And we see our signal quality, or our range. So we're right next to the computer, so we should have fine signal quality. Now if we were to load this up, we have a few different configurations to set before we begin collecting our data. So we'll start here with our channel count. Again, I said we can go up to 4 devices, but I'll start with only 1 channel for now. We can also change our gain, the gain of the system, the range. We like to keep this at around plus or minus 10 millivolts, as well as the resolution. We can also change our sample rate, so our systems are able to collect up to 16 kilohertz of data. Now that could be overkill, but for some instances of either eye wave tracking, or if you want to do any kind of machine learning, the more data we find tend to be the best. So I'll stick over at a sample rate around 4 kilohertz. And again, we have 1 channel on, so we'll go ahead and toggle on our EMG system and click Apply. Additionally, if we were to look at the IMU, we'll click this IMU tab and go over to Orientation. So now I have Orientation turned on, and I'll click Apply. So now we have both EMG and IMU streaming. We can go to our graph settings and change the channel name. So I'll go ahead and change this to FD for flexor digitorum. And we can change the color that's plotted. We can also add various filters, a low pass, high pass, or even a notch filter. So we'll go ahead and click Apply to make sure that all these changes are made. And we can see the device has now been updated, and all of this information is now saved for us to review later on. So before we begin, it's important that we select a directory of where we're storing our data. So I'll click this Browse button, and we'll just go right to the desktop. And I'll name this, for example, New Trial. We'll go ahead and begin. Now we can append the timestamp to the directory, but for today's purpose, I'm just going to name it New Trial. So we'll go ahead and click Confirm. As we were to make this full screen, for example, you can see my body is now at rest, so I'm not seeing a lot of movement. If I were to flex, we'll see our EMG start to pop up. Now, the axes here are a little far, so if we were to right-click on our axes and, for example, auto scale, click Apply, you can now see our noise floor which is around plus or minus 0.02 millivolts. We're going to squeeze. Now we're getting our nice EMG contraction. So I'm holding and relaxing. Now we can add flags. So I can either click to add a drop of a flag, or I can hold and then drop it. We can add new flags as well. So I already say stop and change the color to red. We now have new flags that we can now click and mark. So let's say I start a contraction and I stop. We now have our time trials for further analysis. We can also add various notes. So if I wanted to say subject began, we can now see that these notes are now saved and are automatically uploaded into our files for analysis. We can also see our events. So all of our event flags, either start, stop, each with the time of which they began. We can also look at our IMU. So here we have our IMU in 3D position. So here I'm moving my arm. We can see our IMU data is now plotted in 3D. And we also have the XYZ coordinates and quaternions for later analysis that are now exported for us. So to begin a recording, we simply click this record icon, and it'll start automatically saving the data to our computer. So if I were to begin flexing, I can now hit stop. And let's say I forgot to add this tag. I'll go ahead and drop it right there. We'll begin another contraction, relaxing, begin another contraction. Oops, I forgot to add these tags, so we'll go ahead and drop these in. And of course we can edit these as well during our review session. And we can also add our triggers through a TTL pulse. So we did a 30-second recording. We'll go ahead and save our recording. And now we're able to review our trial. So we can either begin a new trial immediately by selecting this new trial option, or go ahead and review our trial. So we're going to load in our directory. Our data here is stored in new trial. Go ahead and load in our data. And we can see the entire time series of our data. If I were to now only look at, let's say, one channel, our FD, for example, turn off this orientation. And we go ahead and zoom all the way in to our time of interest. You can see our beautiful EMG data. So let's go ahead and take a look here. We can see our EMG peaks, each of our different events, our start and stop. And again, we're able to slide these over to visually meet where our data starts and stops. Now, that's it. We can go ahead and re-export our data. But if we were to look at how the data was stored, I'll go ahead and exit out of this. We can go load in our individual channels, our data, and we'll see this info JSON file that has all of this information. It has the gain of the system, the number of channels used, our active channels are based off of our leads, our orientation sample rate, our EMG sample rate up here. We can also look at our data. So we're going to dive in. We'll see we have our accelerometer data here in this nice Excel file. Now, I didn't have the accelerometer turned on, so none of the data was stored. If we look at the gyroscope, we have all of our positionings, gyro channel 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then our time series here on the left. And more importantly, we have our EMG data. So we're not going to go ahead and convert this. And we see our timestamps here on the left in milliseconds, and then our voltage of our EMG channel. So this is our flexor digitorum based off of what we named it. We have all of our EMG data. Thanks for joining me.